Hey, what's up, guys? So I finally got to film a B2 startup, and this, I believe, is the last B2 that was ever produced by Airbus helicopters or former Eurocopter. The main difference between the B3 or the H125 and the B2 is that this is a manual startup, and you have a throttle grip on the collective, whereas on the B3 you only have a switch basically that you can put to idle or flight. But here you have to control the fuel manually. Also, you have two fuel pumps, and you have some stuff between the seats that we'll take a closer look at. Right here, I'm just checking that each pump can function individually. Talk a little bit about that in a while. Now, to get a better look here from another clip, um, just stop here for a little bit. You'll see on the collective, on the very top, there's a small thing that sticks out, and that is the actual starter. So his right index finger is going to slide a button into the starter button, which will then again ignite the engine or light the igniters on the engine. On the floor here, you have the rotor brake to the left. To the right, we have the fuel cutoff. And then in the middle, there's a little lock for the rotor brake. So in this position, you can't operate the rotor brake. And let's zoom out again, and you can see how the starter actually engages here, and then the twist grip to feed the fuel to the engine for the startup. View from the below here. So here you can see the starter more clearly, and you slide it into the starter, and then you add fuel by twisting the grip. This used to be a lever, but now it's a twist grip. So let's have a look at the actual checklist. 80% of it is the same as the B3 or H125, but the actual starting of the engine on this helicopter is not automatic, so there's a few extra points here. We also have two booster pumps, which we check individually, and then we wait for 30 seconds after they're on, just as the B3, and then we push the start button. And we monitor the NG, and at 10%, you move the fuel flow to about 1/3 of the travel range. And then we have a little point when the outside air temperature is below 0 degrees. You open it straight away. You don't wait for 10% NG. Next point here, outlined in red, is an important one. It says in all cases, keep the starter running throughout the starting sequence. And that means that you have to keep the starter button on the collective pressed in throughout the entire starting sequence. And if you let go too soon, you might get an engine flame out and inadvertently abort the startup, which is not good. That's also one of the reasons why you want to use two hands, is to make sure that you don't slip off the starter button. Moving on, we check the NG increase, T4 limit, and rotor turning. The big one here is T4 limit. This is also the main difference between the B2 and the B3 startup. The B3 is automatic, but here you have to control the fuel flow with the twist grip on the collective. When the NG reaches 40 to 45%, we can finally release the start button. We check the engine oil pressure, and then with the start button released, you just keep twisting the twist grip and increasing the NG until you get to between 67 and 70%, which is the idle speed. The top screen also changes from 3D screen over to the FO. Let's take a quick look at the 3D screen before we look at the actual startup. So the top screen, you have the torque lower left, and then T4 at the top, and then to the right you have the NG. As you see on the T4 limit, you see a red line at 750. That's the maximum start temperature, and then to the right of that red line you have a small red triangle. That's the transient limit. So you can go above 750 for a very short time, as long as you get down below 750 again. If you go above the little triangle, that's an overtemp or a hot start, and you have to abort the startup and call maintenance. Alright, so here's the startup. Things are going to go pretty quickly, so you might want to watch this a couple of times. Starter goes on the collective. Watch the NG. 10%, twisted 1/3. And you can hear the engine as soon as it ignites. Watch the T4 now. There she goes. Keep it at about around 600 to 650. And I just keep feeding on the fuel. Keep an eye on the NG. 35, 36. You got also rotor turning. 40 to 45%, I let go of the NG. I keep feeding fuel by twisting the twist grip very slowly. You can also, there you go, it switches to the FLI. And you can also see the red lights of the gearbox and the engine pressure going out as we go up. Let's do one more. So starter goes on. Watch the NG, 10%. Twist the twist grip to 1/3 of the travel. And here it ignites. You also see the bottom screen on the top of the gauge. That's the oil pressure and temp. You can see that it's increasing. Watch the NG coming up to 40%. That's when we release the starter. 40%. Starter's released. And now you can also monitor the red lights on the caution warning panel going out. 60% switches to FLI. Gearbox out, hydraulics out. And that's it basically. So there you have it. That's basically how you start the B2. So as I said before, the main difference is the power differential between the B3 and the B2. Looks wise, there's actually two things that you might notice. That's the heat shield on the tail boom under the tailpipe is not there on the B2, and there's a strake on the right side. That's to help with the lift production of the tail boom. And also the tailpipe is angled slightly towards the left. In the B3 it's angled straight back. So yeah, there you have it. Have a good one.